Nelson. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Elizabeth Larrazábal, yo soy navegadora de la Alianza. La Alianza es una organización sin fines de lucro creada hace 35 años para ayudar a los inmigrantes, refugiados y personas de bajos recursos. Esta tarde tenemos un seminario con dos temas muy importantes. Uno es la ley para la vivienda justa, que será presentada por Kemi Johnson. Ella es coordinadora jefe del Departamento de Desarrollo Urbano de la ciudad de Houston. El otro seminario será presentado por Lisa Everett. Ella es abogado de la Asociación de Abogados Voluntarios de Houston. Luego de los dos seminarios vamos a hacer la sesión de preguntas y respuestas y luego tendremos una pequeña encuesta que la podrán llenar. Este evento está siendo grabado. Adelante, you can go ahead. Kemi, please.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Kemi Johnson, and I am a senior planner at the City of Houston's Housing and Community Development Department. And I really want to thank the Alliance. We're very excited to be able to present fair housing information to you and really happy about all of their outreach efforts. So without further ado, we'll get into the importance of fair housing. So next slide, please.
Next slide. Como le di anteriormente, el seminario sobre la vivienda justa, la discriminación en el momento de que vamos a buscar una vivienda.
Well, first, let's just start with a few facts about Houston's housing. It's important to note that by 2030, Houston is going to become the nation's third largest city. So it is growing, and these housing costs are growing at a faster rate than income levels. And from 2010 to 2018, area and median sale prices for homes grew by 30%, and income grew by only 19%. These very low and extremely low income populations are growing the fastest. So these things are just really important to keep in mind when we're trying to remedy discriminatory practices and behaviors. The Federal Fair Housing Act, it protects people from discrimination when they're renting or buying their home or getting a mortgage or seeking housing assistance or engaging in any other housing-related activities. And fair housing is really a lot more than receiving just equal treatment. We're looking for a home. It plays a critical role in creating opportunities and determining a person's quality of life. Where you live really matters because of all of these things that you see here. From transit to culture and your social life to education and the job opportunities that are available to you. And so when someone is discriminated against, they are restricted from accessing all of these opportunities. Next slide, please.
La Ley Federal de la Vivienda Justa de 1968 protege a las personas de la discriminación cuando alquilan o compran una casa, obtienen una hipoteca, buscan asistencia para la vivienda o participan en otras actividades relacionadas con la vivienda. La vivienda justa es más que recibir un trato equitativo cuando se busca una vivienda. Desempeña un papel fundamental en la creación de oportunidades y en la determinación de la calidad de vida de una persona. El lugar donde vives importa porque afecta a todas esas cosas. El tránsito, la cultura y la vida social y la educación, las oportunidades laborales y los entornos saludables. Cuando alguien es discriminado, se le restringe el acceso a estas oportunidades.
So it's illegal to not to provide equal treatment to people who are seeking housing, and the Fair Housing Act actually prohibits the following. So, for example, landlords and lenders can't steer a Black family from renting or purchasing a home in a predominantly white neighborhood just off of the simple fact that they're Black. They can include different terms or conditions for leases or loans, and such as imposing higher interest rates for loans for Hispanic persons. And landlords and realtors can't produce discriminatory advertisements. And so these advertisements can't say, you know, no children, or, you know, they can't only be provided in English when in fact an area is highly populated by people with limited English proficiency. And lastly, they can't say that a certain home is unavailable based on a protected class. So for example, this is like saying that second floor apartment is unavailable to a person in a wheelchair when it is in fact available. Next slide, please.
Es ilegal no brindar un trato igual a las personas que buscan vivienda. La Ley de Equidad de Vivienda prohíbe lo siguiente: los propietarios o prestamistas no pueden impedir que una familia negra alquile o compre una casa en un vecindario predominantemente blanco porque es negro. No pueden incluir términos o condiciones diferentes en los arrendamientos o préstamos, como imponer tasas de interés más altas a los préstamos para personas hispanas. Los propietarios o los agentes de bienes raíces no pueden producir anuncios discriminatorios, como anuncios que digan no niños, o que solo brinden anuncios en inglés, en un área densamente poblada por personas con dominio limitado de inglés. Y no pueden decir que ciertas viviendas no están disponibles en base a una clase protegida. Por ejemplo, decir que un apartamento en el segundo piso no está disponible para una persona en silla de ruedas cuando realmente lo está.
Here we'll talk about the protected classes under the Federal Fair Housing Act. And it's just really important to note that despite the fact that the Fair Housing Act was passed, these marginalized groups are still often excluded from access to those things, to quality and fair housing, and you know, it would limit their access to their job, schools, transportation, and more. So those protected classes we have here. First, we have race, and it's a group of, you know, individuals and humans based on their shared physical or genetic traits. Color, which is the pigmentation of the skin as an indication of someone's race. And so here under color, color is included separately from race because people can discriminate someone solely on their color. For example, someone can, you know, based on a person's complexion, someone's skin is lighter or darker. Next, we have a national origin, and that's the relationship between an individual and a state, and it refers to ancestry and birthplace, their ethnic background, and their language. Next is the religion, and that can be either overt or indirect discrimination. Sex, and familial status, and that really protects families with children under the age of 18, and it includes couples that have adopted children or legal guardians of children, foster parents, grandparents with dependents, so forth. And finally, handicap and disability, and that is the functional limitation of 3 or more of the following areas. So we have self-care, learning, mobility, receptive and expressive language, capacity for independent living. And, you know, it's important to note also that discrimination based on disability can occur if a person is denied reasonable accommodations, such as allowing service dogs or providing an assigned parking space closer to the unit, as well as reasonable modifications that will allow a person to have full access to housing features, such as lowering the cabinets or, you know, light switches or installing the ramp. Next slide, please.
A pesar de la aprobación de la Ley de Vivienda Justa, los grupos marginados a menudo siguen estando excluidos del acceso a una vivienda justa y de calidad. Esto limita su acceso a trabajo, escuelas, transporte y más. Las 7 clases protegidas son raza, una agrupación de humanos basada en rasgos físicos o genéticos compartidos. Incluye el color de la piel, la textura, el cabello, la cara y otros rasgos físicos o genéticos asociados con un grupo racial o étnico. Color, la pigmentación de la piel como indicación de la raza de alguien. El color se incluye por separado de la raza, porque las personas pueden discriminar únicamente por el color. Por ejemplo, alguien puede discriminar a otra persona cuya piel es más clara o más oscura. Origen nacional es la relación entre un individuo y un estado y se refiere a la ascendencia, al lugar de nacimiento, origen étnico o idioma de una persona. Religión, que puede ser una discriminación abierta contra los miembros de una religión en particular o una discriminación indirecta como la zonificación para limitar el uso de hogares privados como lugar de culto. Sexo. La gama de características que pertenecen y diferencian la masculinidad y la feminidad según el sexo biológico. El Estado familiar protege a las familias con niños menores de 18 años de acciones discriminatorias, incluidas las parejas que adoptan niños, los tutores legales de los niños, los padres adoptivos, los abuelos con dependientes y las mujeres embarazadas. Discapacidad. Limitaciones funcionales en 3 o más de las siguientes áreas de actividad de la vida que incluyen autocuidado, aprendizaje, movilidad, autodirección, lenguaje receptivo expresivo, capacidad de vida independiente y autosuficiencia económica. La discriminación basada en la discapacidad también puede ocurrir si a una persona se le niegue adaptar como permitir perros de servicio o proporcionar un espacio de estacionamiento asignado más cerca a la unidad, así como modificaciones razonables que permitan a una persona el uso completo de las características de la vivienda, como armarios, interruptores de luz o instalar una rampa.
Okay, I just want to just take a brief second and request that if someone's not speaking, can everyone just mute? We're getting a little bit of background noise and it may make it harder for some others to hear today. Okay. Can you go back one more slide, please? All right, so on this slide, we'll just briefly cover. The following classes that are not protected under the federal law. These include source of income and age, and although age is not a protected class, disability is, and it supports elderly individuals. Next, we have sexual orientation and gender. The Fair Housing Act does not specifically include sexual orientation and gender as a protected class, but some states do. Next, marital status. And finally, persons with a criminal record. And so, according to HUD, due to racial and ethnic disparities in the United States justice system, criminal history-based restrictions on access to housing are likely to disproportionately affect African Americans and Hispanic persons. So, although it's not a protected class, these policies of refusing to rent to those persons with a criminal record could in fact be discrimination. Next slide, please.
Fuentes de ingreso y edad. Aunque la edad no es una clase protegida, la discapacidad sí lo es y apoya a las personas mayores. Orientación sexual y género. La Ley de Equidad y Vivienda no incluye específicamente la orientación sexual y el género como una clase protegida, pero algunos estados sí. Estados civiles. Y las personas con antecedentes penales, según el HUD, debido a las disparidades raciales y étnicas en el sistema de justicia de los Estados Unidos, es probable que las restricciones de acceso a la vivienda basadas en antecedentes penales afecten desproporcionadamente a las personas afroamericanas e hispanas. Aunque no es una clase protegida, las políticas de negarse a alquilar a personas con antecedentes penales podrían, de hecho, ser discriminación.
Here are just a few resources for helping anyone, and including yourself, with housing discrimination. You can file a housing discrimination complaint with HUD by calling or submitting a complaint online. Both the Texas Workforce Commission and the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center are additional and great resources. The Texas Workforce Commission can enforce the Fair Housing Act in Texas, and the Greater Houston Fair Housing Center can help people in the Houston area who experience housing discrimination. Next slide, please.
Aquí hay algunos recursos para ayudar a cualquier persona, incluyendo usted mismo, con discriminación en la vivienda. Puede presentar una queja por discriminación al Departamento de Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano de los Estados Unidos. Tanto la Comisión de Fuerza Laboral de Texas como el Centro de Vivienda Justa del área metropolitana de Houston son también excelentes recursos. La Comisión de Fuerza Laboral de Texas puede hacer cumplir la ley de vivienda justa en Texas, y el Centro de Vivienda Justa del Gran Houston también puede ayudar a las personas en el área de Houston que han experimentado discriminación en la vivienda.
This is just, you can find a host of your housing resources, including downloads in various languages on our HCDD website. And if you feel like you just face discrimination in housing with renting a home, you can call our Fair Housing Landlord Tenant line, and that number is 832-394-6200, extension 5. And last but not least, HCDD has compiled several resources regarding the COVID-19 Eviction Moratorium and on the HCDD website. So there you'll find flyers in various languages. I believe there are about 7, and that includes the CDC Declaration itself, as well as links to legal aid, rental assistance, and advice to speak to how to speak to your landlord. So I'll add that direct link to the website in the comment section. Next slide, please.
Otros recursos de vivienda justa sería la información descargable sobre vivienda justa en 6 idiomas. Ahí está la dirección para que en internet, y línea directa de vivienda justa para inquilinos y propietarios, con el número 832-394-62000, extensión 5.
So everyone deserves a safe and affordable place to call home. The Harris County Housing Survey is being conducted with the Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University, and the survey is really to provide a picture of real estate needs in the Harris County area, in Harris County. And so in order to take that survey, you can visit myhomeishere.org.
Todos merecen un lugar seguro y accesible para llamar hogar, especialmente usted. La encuesta de vivienda del condado de Harris está siendo realizada por el Instituto Kinder para la Investigación Urbana de la Universidad de Rice y proporcionará una imagen de las necesidades inmobiliarias del condado de Harris. Pueden tomar la encuesta en myhomeishere.org.
Well, this concludes the fair housing portion of the presentation. Thank you so much for your time today. And again, I will put those links in the comment section. So thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Turn it back over to you, Elizabeth.
Muchas gracias por atender esta parte del seminario de la vivienda justa. Ahora pasaremos a la parte de la moratoria en los desalojos, que será presentado por la señora Elisa Everest.
Hi, I'm Lisa Everett from Houston Volunteer Lawyers, presenting on the Eviction Moratorium. So the CDC Eviction Moratorium became effective September 4th, and it will expire December 31st. It applies to any case at any phase in the eviction process. Just one moment. It also applies to all residential properties. It applies only to non-payment of rent cases. If someone is being evicted for something other than non-payment of rent, the CDC Declaration does not work. It requires the tenant to do something, which is give the landlord the signed declaration, and both tenants and landlords can be penalized for violations. Next slide, please.
Voy a tener que seguir yo. Había otra persona que iba a hacer esta parte que no la veo, así que voy a seguir yo con la parte en español. Moratoria en los desalojos CDC entró en vigencia el 4 de septiembre de 2020 y vence el 31 de diciembre.
Okay, this is Laura, la property interpreter. Is that okay? ¿Quieres que lo lea?
Sí, por favor.
Okay. La moratoria en los desalojos de CDC entró en vigencia el 4 de septiembre del 2020 y vence el 31 de diciembre. Los procedimientos iniciados con anterioridad deben suspenderse. Se aplica a todas las propiedades residenciales. Se aplica a casos de impago de alquiler. Se aplica a todas las fases de un desalojo. Tramitación, enjuiciamiento, orden de posesión. Requiere acción de parte del inquilino. Los inquilinos y los propietarios pueden ser sancionados y pueden tener infracciones.
The CDC eviction moratorium works when the landlord is given a signed declaration from the tenant. When the landlord receives the signed declaration, then the landlord is not supposed to give the tenant a notice to vacate. The landlord is not supposed to file an eviction. The landlord is not supposed to prosecute an eviction, which means ask the judge to grant an eviction. And it also means that the landlord is not supposed to request a writ of possession. A writ of possession is when the landlord requests that the constable physically remove the tenant from the property after getting an eviction judgment. It also means that if the tenant tells the court, like if there's already an eviction filed and the tenant tells the judge that they gave the landlord a declaration, then the court is not supposed to grant an eviction or issue a writ of possession through December 31st.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, ¿tú quieres que yo lea todo lo que está en español? Ok. La moratoria en los desalojos del CDC. Si un propietario recibe una declaración del CDC firmada de un inquilino, entonces se supone que el propietario no debería entregar un aviso de desalojo, tramitar un desalojo, enjuiciar un desalojo, solicitar una orden de posesión. Si un inquilino le dice al tribunal que dio una declaración de CDC a un propietario, entonces el tribunal no debería, 1, otorgar un desalojo y 2, emitir una orden de posesión.
I have a quick question for the interpreter.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to interpret each section as I do it in case I add a comment?
Yeah, that would be good because I do have the Spanish translation, and if you add anything to it, then you need to make note.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thanks.
if you want to go, I don't know if you want to go session by session, or because the sessions right now, they're like 2 or 3 paragraphs, and I can read it, but if you add something, then I have to go back to read the whole thing at one time.
I'll pause at each section. Okay, so we're actually going to go through the actual CDC declaration right now.
Okay, vamos a revisar la declaración ahora del CDC.
The first thing is it's for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention's temporary halt and evictions to prevent the further spread of COVID-19.
Ok, y esto es para poder proteger que se pueda esparcer el COVID-19.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Can we do the next slide, please? The CDC Declaration is made under penalty of perjury. That means that if you lie, you can be prosecuted by the government.
Ok, entonces la declaración del CDC se hace bajo la pena de perjurio, así que se puede ser perjuiciado si no se dice, si se da algo falso.
The first line says, you can leave it on the Spanish, okay? Because I have my English version. I certify under penalty of perjury pursuant to 28 USC 1746 that the following facts are true and correct.
Yo certifico bajo pena de perjurio de conformidad con el Código de los Estados Unidos número 28 de 1746 que lo siguiente es verdadero y correcto.
The first thing the person certifies is, I have used best efforts to obtain all available government assistance for rent or housing.
Entonces, la primera cosa que el inquilino certifica es que he dedicado mis mayores esfuerzos para obtener cualquier asistencia gubernamental que hay disponible para alquiler o vivienda.
This means that in order to use this form, you have to request rental assistance. This means either calling or applying for assistance with Baker Ripley or calling 211 to find out what organization might have rental assistance for you.
Esto lo que quiere decir que el inquilino tiene que buscar una asistencia para poder pagar la renta, lo que esto significa debe de llamar al 211 para que le puedan dar información acerca de eso.
It does not say that you have to receive rental assistance. It says you have to try to get rental assistance.
No dice que tiene que recibir asistencia para la renta, sino que tiene que tratar de buscar ayuda para él.
You can go ahead and leave it on the Spanish slide because I have my English slides up, just so you know. Thank you. The next thing that you have to certify is a financial requirement.
La próxima cosa que el inquilino tiene que certificar es su requerimiento financiero.
One of the following three has to be true. Either you either expect to earn no more than $99,000 in annual income for calendar year 2020, or no more than $198,000 of married filing joint.
Una de las tres cosas tiene que ocurrir. Debe certificar que espera no ganar más de $99,000 en ingresos anuales para el año 2020 o no más de $198,000 si presenta una declaración de impuestos conjunta.
Or you were not required to report any income for calendar year 2019.
O que fue requerido reportar ningún ingreso para el año 2019.
Or you received an economic impact payment, also known as a stimulus check, from the CARES Act. That was that $1,200 check that some people received this year.
O usted no recibió un pago de impacto, lo que se llama el cheque estímulo, que se recibió bajo el acto de CARES, que no lo recibió este año.
As long as one of those is true, it's okay if more than one is true, but as long as one of those is true, a person can use this form.
Mientras una de estas tres posibilidades sea verdad, entonces esa persona puede usar esta forma.
Also, there's no requirement that someone has to be a citizen or have legal status. It applies to any citizenship status or even people who don't have any citizenship status or any documentation.
También no requiere una situación migratoria. Cualquier ciudadano, cualquier persona no tiene que ser ciudadano, puede recibir esta ayuda.
The next thing that someone has to certify is, I am unable to pay my full rent or make a full housing payment due to substantial loss of household income, loss of compensable hours of work or wages, layoffs, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses.
Otra de las cosas que el inquilino debe certificar es que debe decir que no puedo pagar mi alquiler completo o hacer el pago total de mi vivienda debido a una pérdida sustancial de ingresos en mi hogar, pérdida de horas en el trabajo o pérdida de salarios compensables, suspensión de trabajo o gastos médicos extraordinarios que salieron de mi bolsillo.
It just says that there has to be a loss of income. It doesn't say that the loss of income has to be due to COVID.
Solamente tiene que certificar que tuvo una pérdida de ingresos y no tiene que necesariamente ser proveído esa pérdida a consecuencia de COVID.
The next thing that someone has to certify is, I am using best efforts to make timely partial payments that are as close to the full payment as the individual's circumstances may permit, taking into account other non-discretionary expenses.
Otra cosa que el inquilino debe certificar es lo siguiente. Estoy haciendo todo lo posible para realizar pagos parciales a tiempo que se acerquen al pago total, tanto como lo permitan las circunstancias, teniendo en cuenta otros gastos no discrecionales.
Houston Volunteer Lawyers is recommending that people pay up to 30, if they have had a reduction in income and can't pay, that they attempt to make a payment that is 30% of their income, because that's what's required under federal housing programs when you receive ongoing federal assistance.
Entonces, los voluntarios, la Asociación de Voluntarios de Abogados de Houston están recomendando que por lo menos hagan un pago del 30% de lo que se debe, aunque reciban asistencia por un 30%.
If you still can't pay that much, we still recommend making even a nominal payment, $25 payment, just something to show that you're making partial payments.
Y si el inquilino no puede pagar tanto, el 30%, estamos recomendando que por lo menos pague el 25%, aunque sea $25, para demostrar que está haciendo pagos parciales.
The next thing that you have to certify is, if evicted, I would likely become homeless, need to move into a homeless shelter, or need to move into a new residence shared by other people who live in close quarters because I have no other available housing options. I think you need to go back a slide.
Yeah, you're on the wrong slide. Oops.
This one?
Okay, so it's the third bullet, right?
Correct.
Right, okay. Otra cosa que tiene que certificar es, si me desalojan, es muy probable que me quede sin hogar. Necesitaría mudarme a un refugio para personas sin hogar o necesitaría mudarme a una residencia compartida por otras personas en ambientes reducidos porque no tengo otras opciones de viviendas disponibles.
Next slide, please. The next thing that you have to certify is, I understand that I must still pay rent or make a housing payment and comply with other obligations that I may have under my tenancy, lease agreement, or similar contract. I further understand that fees, penalties, or interest for not paying rent or making a housing payment on time as required by my tenancy, lease agreement, or similar contract may still be charged or collected.
Otra cosa que el inquilino debe certificar es lo siguiente. Entiendo que todavía debo pagar el alquiler o hacer los pagos de vivienda y cumplir con otras obligaciones que pueda tener bajo mi contrato de arrendamiento o contrato similar. Además, entiendo que las tarifas, penalidades o intereses por no pagar alquiler o pago de vivienda a tiempo, según lo requiere mi contrato de arrendamiento o contrato similar, aún pueden ser cobrados o colectados.
Someone asked, what happens if a property won't accept partial payments? That is actually something I was going to bring up. Some properties do not accept partial payments. If you've attempted it, then you try to make a partial payment. It doesn't say they have to accept it.
Ok, alguien acaba de preguntar qué pasa si el propietario no acepta un pago parcial. Bueno, y no lo tienen por qué aceptar, pero por lo menos usted trató de pagar, hacer un pago parcial.
The next thing that you have, so I just want to go back to also the one that we read just before that about paying rent. This is not a rent forgiveness program. The rent accumulates, late fees accumulate, If utilities go unpaid, that accumulates, and it all becomes due on January 1st.
Ok, otra cosa que quiero hacer una aclaración en la punto número 1, que esto no está protegido bajo el programa de alquiler. El alquiler hay que pagarlo, los intereses se van acumulando y toda la renta se debe pagar para el 1 de enero del 2021.
Okay, someone asked if the English can go up while I'm reading it, so we'll flip back and forth. If you can go back one, please. The final part of the declaration is, I further understand that at the end of this temporary halt on evictions on December 31st, 2020, my housing provider may require payment in full for all payments not made prior to and during the temporary halt, and failure to pay may make me subject to eviction pursuant to state and local laws. And now you can go to Spanish.
So you went back to...
Someone asked if we could be on the English when I'm speaking and then go to Spanish when you're speaking. So if we can go to the Spanish slide now, we'll just flip back and forth.
Okay, then you want to flip to Spanish? Okay.
It's
Okay,
the
so
middle
we've
one.
already said that, right?
I went over it briefly, but we didn't read the actual what someone's signing. You need to go back one, please.
Okay, so the bullet number 1.
Bullet number 2.
Oh, yes, bullet number 2, I'm sorry. Okay. Además entiendo que al final de esta suspensión temporal o de desalojos, el 31 de diciembre del 2020, mi proveedor de vivienda puede requerir el pago total de todos los pagos que no se hayan realizado antes y durante la suspensión temporal, y la falta de pago puede hacerme sujeto a un desalojo de conformidad con las leyes estatales y locales.
And then the final thing is, I understand that any false or misleading statements or omissions may result in criminal and civil actions for fines, penalties, damages, or imprisonment. So only people for whom this applies, only they should use it.
Ok, entonces por último, solamente las personas que aplican lo deben usar y tienen que declarar. Entiendo que cualquier declaración u omisión falsa o engañosa puede resultar en acciones penales y civiles, resultando en multas, sanciones, daños o encarcelamiento.
Okay, next slide. There are some issues with the CDC. This does not go into effect unless a tenant gives it to the landlord.
Ok, hay algunos problemas con el CDC. Esto no está en efecto a no ser que esto se le dé al propietario.
The tenant should give it in a way that's trackable so they can prove that they gave it to the landlord. Either they should email it, they should fax it, or if they do it in person, they should record giving it to the landlord on the phone or request a receipt.
Ok, y esto debe tener una conformidad de que se le ha dado al propietario, que el inquilino se lo ha dado al dueño de la propiedad, vía, ya sea vía correo electrónico, por vía de fax, o si se lo da en persona, que pueda poder grabar el momento en que se lo entregó en persona.
If someone doesn't have access to a printer and can't print out the CDC declaration, HVL is helping people e-sign it as long as they have access to email on their phone or a computer. But many people we have the technology so that people can e-sign on their phone.
What is HVL?
Houston Volunteer Lawyers.
Okay. I am so sorry. Repeat what you just said.
So Houston Volunteer Lawyers is helping people e-sign declarations if they don't have a way of getting a paper copy. We can send it to you to your phone so that you can sign it on your phone and send it back to you so that you can forward it to your landlord via email.
Okay. Los abogados voluntarios de Houston están asistiendo a aquellas personas que no tengan acceso a correo electrónico. Solo pueden mandar a su teléfono. Ustedes lo pueden firmar electrónicamente, se los mandan, regresan a ellos de vuelta.
It requires best efforts for trying to get rental assistance or to make partial payments. Those are different things for different people, but people should continue trying even if they're denied rental assistance.
Okay. Las personas deben continuar las posibilidades de obtener asistencia para pagar la renta.
And then finally, we already brought up partial payment. Some landlords won't take it. Just because the landlord doesn't take it doesn't mean you didn't try.
Okay, where are you now?
I'm under partial payments. Under HVL recommends 30% of income. I'm not reading it directly because we're almost out of time. I'm summarizing.
Okay. Acerca de los pagos parciales, los abogados de Houston Voluntarios recomiendan que por lo menos paguen el 30% de la renta.
And then can we go to the next slide? The Texas Supreme Court has issued some emergency orders, and the Office of Court Administration is offering guidance.
La Corte Suprema de Texas ha dado unas órdenes de emergencia y directrices de la Oficina de la Administración de la Corte.
If you do have to go to court, in JP court, some courts are holding it in person and other courts are holding it via Zoom. If your judge is requesting an in-person hearing, anyone is allowed to request a Zoom or phone hearing if they don't feel safe going to a courthouse.
Okay. Las audiencias y los juicios se están haciendo en persona como también remotamente. Si tiene que ir al tribunal de desalojo en persona, se puede hacer en persona o vía Zoom o por teléfono. Y también las apelaciones de desalojo se pueden hacer, no, las apelaciones de desalojo se pueden hacer por teléfono o por Zoom también.
If someone appeals an eviction from JP court to county court at law, those are only taking place via Zoom. If you can't use Zoom, you can call in.
Okay. Como dije anteriormente, el Tribunal de Justicia del Condado, las apelaciones de desalojo se están haciendo vía Zoom o también por teléfono.
Mira cómo habla. Elizabeth.
Emergency, can someone please mute? Emergency Order 25 just says that anyone who's being served with an eviction right now, the constable is also supposed to give them the CDC Declaration that they might be able to use if it applies to them to give to their landlord.
Ok, entonces la orden de emergencia número 25 aclara que los tribunales pueden restablecer las audiencias hasta el próximo año cuando los inquilinos hayan entregado a sus propietarios la declaración de los CDC.
It also says that if you already have a court case, then you have to file it with the court in addition to giving it to your landlord.
También dice que si el proceso ya está en curso, la declaración del CDC debe presentarse ante el tribunal, además de entregarlo al propietario.
Emergency Order 27 is about an eviction diversion program, but the details of that program have not been released yet, but Harris County is one of the pilot counties, and we're still waiting to get more information about the eviction diversion program.
Ok, entonces la orden de emergencia número 27 es un programa de debido desalojo que todavía no tenemos los detalles disponibles, pero lo vamos a tener muy pronto.
If you want to apply for services, you can apply online at makejusticehappen.org. The second link is the actual link to the application. Sorry, it's a messy link, but you can find apply here from our homepage, www.makejusticehappen.org.
Ok, si quieren aplicar, disculpen, es un link muy largo, pero si quieren aplicar pueden hacerlo directamente a www.makejusticehappen.org.
Houston Volunteer Lawyers is part of a Harris County and Houston, Eviction Defense Coalition. The other partners we have are Lone Star Legal Aid, the South Texas College of Law of Houston, the Earl Carl Institute, and the University of Houston Law Center.
Otras ayudas legales en Houston, aparte de los abogados voluntarios, sería el Lone Star Legal Aid, el South Texas College of Law, Earl Carl Institute, la Universidad de Houston, el Centro de Abogacía, el Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, Legal Aid of Northwest Texas.
Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid and Legal Aid of Northwest Texas actually serve other parts of Texas, and I apologize. It serves other parts of Texas, just so you know.
Okay, solamente para que sepan, el Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid y el Legal Aid of Northwest Texas apoya a otros ciudades de Texas, para que sepan.
Next slide, please. If people are seeking pro se resources, that means without the assistance of an attorney. These are two good websites to use. But if you have a legal issue with a landlord, I strongly urge you to apply for services with Houston Volunteer Lawyers or one of the other organizations I listed.
Ok, si una persona quiere hacer esto por sí misma, hay recursos de pro se como la ayuda legal de Texas. Les recomiendo firmemente que vayan al texaslawhelp.org o a cualquier otra de las entidades que mencionamos anteriormente.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
Does anyone have questions?
Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta,
For me or Kimmy Johnson from the City of Houston, who presented on fair housing.
para mí o para Kevin Johnson de la ciudad de Houston.
Hi, my name is Jamal, and I have a question. Does it affect to people, to immigrants who applied for adjustment of status as a public assistant?
The question was, I think the question is, can the CDC declaration be used for people who are applying for adjustment of status?
Yes.
The CDC declaration can be used by anyone regardless of immigration status, even undocumented people.
Wow.
So it means it does not affect, yes?
It won't, if you're asking if it's considered like a public charge,
Yes.
I don't believe so.
Oh,
Because you're not
okay.
receiving it. I don't believe so.
Okay, sure.
Lorelei, ¿puedes traducirla en español? Y hay una pregunta en el chat también en español. La voy a leer para que la traduzca. Quisiera saber cuáles son los beneficios de firmar el CDC en caso de que haya un procedimiento abierto de desalojo en contra del inquilino. Para Lisa.
¿Cuál es la pregunta? ¿Me puedes hablar más alto, por favor?
Quisiera saber cuáles son los beneficios de firmar el CDC en caso de que haya un procedimiento abierto de desalojo en contra del inquilino.
Okay, I would like to know what the benefits would be to sign the CDC, sign with the CDC in case there is already a process, in a process from the homeowner.
It will stop the eviction. If you're going to court,
Va a parar el desalojo.
if you're going to court, every court will abate the action. Abate means continue it or delay it until next year.
Y si va a la corte va a parar el desalojo, lo que quiere decir que lo va a posponer hasta el próximo año.
Another question, for example, if we cannot afford to pay for rent and we need to pay rent like every month up to each third days. So when do we need to apply that CDL declaration, declaration to the landlord? Before third, yes? Before each day, the third, yeah?
You only have to give the CDC declaration one time. I'm sorry, did you want to interpret that, please?
Sí, la pregunta era cuántas veces hay que hacer la declaración al CDC, si hay que hacerla todos los meses o no. Entonces la señora contestó la señora Everett, la abogada, de que solamente lo tiene que hacer la toma una vez. Okay, I got through to the one time, the CDC.
And what if a landlord will not accept your declaration on time?
What about if the homeowner, if the landlord does not accept your declaration?
Then that's why I recommend that people record themselves giving it to them. If the land, or you can mail it. They can't reject it that way, and you can also email it. If you want it faxed, HVL will fax it for people as well.
Por eso es que recomendé que lo puedan mandar por correo. Él no la puede rechazar una vez que se mande por correo, que lo manden a través de un correo electrónico o por intermedio de fax. Por lo menos intento.
There's a question in the chat if slides will be made available. I am fine with my slides being shared to anyone who requested. If you email whoever you signed up with to come to this presentation, I have no problem with this being shared.
La abogada Everett acaba de decir de que ella no tiene problema de compartir los slides que se ven en la imagen de las personas que han participado.
Sí, por eso se dijo al principio que se iba a grabar la presentación para que las personas que estén interesadas me pongan por chat su email o envíen su email y se las mandaremos.
Esta presentación ha sido grabada. Si la señora Larrazabal con la Alliance les dice que si están interesados en recibirla, que le manden a ella su correo electrónico y ella se la envía a través del correo electrónico.
And is it possible to, if you can email us that contacts? I mean, that all of them, I mean, all of that contacts?
Is it possible to email all of your the contact information from you guys?
Like you said, the lawyers and CDC, I mean, the Landlord's Declaration or whatever.
Sí, les vamos a mandar totalmente la presentación, la van a tener completa.
We're going to send you the complete presentation.
Also, I've posted in the chat, I apologize, it's not in the slide. I'll ask that it be added to the slides before they're sent out, but I posted a link to texaslawhelp.org where you can download the CDC Declaration, and it's also translated there into multiple languages, including Spanish, Vietnamese, just one second, Mandarin, Arabic.
Okay, can you slow down just a bit, Ms. Everett?
Yes, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, because this is not written. Okay, okay, so in Spanish, Vietnamese, what else?
Mandarin and Arabic.
Ok, entonces la abogada Everett acaba de decir que ya ha acoplado a esta grabación la aplicación de CDC para Saba y está traducida en varios lenguajes, incluyendo español, vietnamita, mandarín y en árabe.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
I have a question.
Okay.
Someone is sharing their email screen.
¿Alguien está compartiendo la imagen de su correo electrónico?
Ah, que ya.
Okay.
Sí, ponla. Ahí está mi email para que todo el mundo lo anote.
Ahí está mi correo electrónico. La señora Barrazábal, Elizabeth Barrazábal puso su correo electrónico y su información para que tomen apunte.
Ahora vamos a hacer el poll, la encuesta, para que la hagan ahorita mismo y damos luego por terminada la sesión.
Okay.
Si por favor pueden hacerlo un momentico. Gracias.
Okay. If you'd like to fill this out, this is questions about the presentation. Elizabeth, ¿quiere que digan y lo manden?
Sí, al final tienen que submit. La llenan y submit, le dan abajo y...
Okay, so you need to complete the study and then at the end you submit it and send it. This is the workshop.
May I ask a question to Ms. Johnson? What do y'all do with the Houston Fair Housing and Tenant Landlord Hotline? Is that for
The hotline,
different information or to request an investigation?
Yeah, information, any questions, if you are not sure, if you've experienced discrimination and you want to talk to someone about your steps to maybe find out how to file, all of that and all of those questions, you can call our tenant landlord hotline to find out more information about any of those topics.
Do you help people file complaints with HUD or TWC, or is it with the city or something else?
Yeah, we direct them to those resources, but yes, absolutely. And all the steps. And then again, if someone's not exactly sure if it is discrimination or, are not sure about the next steps, then yes, that hotline is very helpful.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have another question, sorry. I have another question. So, for example, when I go to look for apartment, they always require the income and I'm in the housing program with Houston Area Women's Center, and so when I give them letter from Houston Area Women's Center, they do not accept even those letters. So it's kind of like you go through in one day, like in two days, and like search the apartment 15 places, and they do not accept the documentation because you don't have income. Does it call as a discrimination or?
I'll take this. If you want me to interpret that, Ms. Everett, I will take your summary of the question.
Okay, sure, thank you.
What was the question, the summary of her question?
Yes, so, I mean, is that their right do not accept you as a renters? Like, how can I say?
No, an interpreter will take the question as a summary, because I cannot hear very well when they're asking you a question. So
I think I heard it. I think the question was, is it discrimination to not accept someone based on their income status?
Ok, entonces la pregunta es, ¿hay discriminación en no aceptar a alguien basado en su estado financiero o económico? Okay.
I think this is directed at you, Kimmy, but I also, I'll say that income is not a protected status.
Ok, entonces yo voy a decir que el estado financiero no está protegido.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, it's not. And again, if those are for those special questions, and again, if you're not sure, that tenant landlord line, and I can, I'll be sure to add that telephone number in the chat to the hotline. Can be can be helpful for those particular questions.
I have another question as a follow-up to that, Kimmy. I've been told that there is a person whose name I can't remember right now at the City of Houston within your department that will help direct people to apartments that might accommodate their situation, like receiving housing assistance from Houston Area Women's Center. Do y'all provide those resources?
Now, those for vouchers and for those that is the housing authority. I'm sorry.
But like the Houston Area Women's Center has a housing voucher, and I apologize. I just don't want to name someone if it's wrong. And I thought there was someone in your department who would actually help. Like if you know that someone's receiving financial assistance through something other than a voucher, that they might know apartments that might be willing to accept rental assistance. Just for the record, there is no requirement that any apartment accept a voucher. But places that accept a voucher also might be more willing to accept assistance from other organizations like HAWK.
Thank you, Lisa.
¿Han tenido problemas para hacer el cuestionario y enviarlo porque había problemas al principio, pero ya se volvió a pasar de nuevo y quiero saber si han tenido problemas.
Elizabeth, yo lo contesté todo, pero en la pregunta 3 no me deja ir a la 4 si no contesto algo, así que tuve que contestar cualquier cosa para poder seguir al 4 y terminar con el cuestionario.
¿Y si terminó el cuestionario?
Sí, pero en
pudiste-
la 3 dice, en la pregunta 2 dice pasar a la cuarta. Cuando uno hace esa opción, no te deja pasar a la cuarta. Entonces tuve que ir como 2 veces a la pregunta 3, contesté cualquier cosa y después pasar a las siguientes preguntas y ya terminé con el cuestionario. Pero la pregunta que contesté en la 3 no es la verdadera. No hay otra parte de decir no sé o...
Bueno, vamos a pasar el
Some
cuestionario
issues.
por el correo porque definitivamente hay algún problema técnico con este cuestionario. Así
Yo
que
tengo el mismo problema.
disculpen.
Yo no tengo ese problema, Elizabeth. Yo pasé, salté la pregunta y pasé a la 4 sin ningún problema. Con el
Yo
nuevo
Buenas tardes.
workshop poll que mandaron. Obviamente, yo mandé el primero. En el
Buenas
primero
tardes.
tuve problemas y con el segundo no tengo problemas. ¿Ok?
Buenas
Solamente
tardes.
Voy
Buenas
a
tardes.
repetir.
Yo también tengo problemas. Soy Rosa Castillo. Buenas tardes. También tengo problema con la pregunta 3 a las 7. No me deja pasar.
A mí me
Bueno,
pasa igual. Tuve que contestar cualquier cosa porque no me dejaba pasar. Entonces, me pasa igual que la otra señora.
disculpen con el cuestionario, lo pasaré por email. Ya, por favor, me lo solicitan o yo las personas que tengo su email se los enviaré. Y vamos a terminar este seminario por el día de hoy. Les recuerdo que la organización de Alliance está aquí para atender a las personas que lo necesitan. Tenemos una serie de programas muy interesantes, como es certificar a carreras cortas como ayudantes de aire acondicionado, de celulares, hacer el curso para manejar camiones comerciales, aprender inglés, conseguir ayuda financiera, préstamos para microempresas, corregir el resumen si necesitan actualizarlo, asesoría legal, asesoría mental, una serie de servicios que pueden escribirme y yo los referiré a esas personas. Muchísimas gracias por compartir este rato con nosotros y muchas gracias a la señora Johnson y a Liz Everett por su aporte para este seminario tan importante.
So basically, Ms. Everett, she said that she thanks everyone, and especially Ms. Johnson and you, Ms. Everett, for giving this very important information. People had trouble with the survey. It skips, like if when they go to like from 3 to 7, it skips to 7. So I believe Elizabeth said that she would do it. She would put it in the mail, okay, to make sure they get it. She also talked about other services that the Alliance provides, English classes and any other type of services that they may need to. Please contact her, and the Alliance will be able to support them and help them or direct them to places that they can go. And thanks everyone for participating in this video.
Thank you. Ya.